Hello and welcome to the Milltown Way, the independent Shamrock Rovers podcast covering all things hoops. I'm your host, Ryan Brennan, and I'm solo today. It's episode 43, and after another memorable week, there's plenty to get through. We'll start by looking at Shamrock Rovers' 4-1 extra time victory over Cork City in the FAI Cup second round, where John McGovern came off the bench to produce a sensational performance and help send the holders into the next round. We also discussed the announcement of Roberto Lopes' Civic's reception, taking place next Saturday at Eamonn Ceannt Park, recognising his outstanding World Cup campaign with Cape Verde and what promises to be a special afternoon. And finally, we'll look ahead to another huge European test as Rovers travel to Armenia to face Ararat Armenia in the first leg of their UEFA Champions League second qualifying round tie. So let's get into it. And we'll start off with the defence of the FAI Cup. Shamrock Rovers beating Cork City 4-1 after 120 minutes, exactly what we said last week, or well, during the week, that we didn't want. And that was an additional 30 minutes in the legs for Shamrock Rovers. It was a rotated side from the one that did beat Floriana on Tuesday, and of course that's with the trip to Armenia in mind. The squad do travel there on Sunday for the game on Tuesday. But yeah, it was expected that there was going to be changes, and that's exactly what we did see. It didn't, well, you can say it did, maybe did do some harm changing it that much. You were to expect that it wasn't going to be as fluid a performance as you'd normally suspect, and maybe if the starting lineup hadn't had as many changes, maybe an extra 30 minutes wasn't going to be needed. However, of course, look, you also have to manage the minutes of these players who are going to be playing 3 games within a week for some. But yeah, look, a few changes that we suspected. Sabawale started, so did Matt Healy. Matt Healy obviously was suspended for Tuesday's 5-1 victory over Floriana. Sabawale came on for the last half an hour or so of that game. So he was able to. Both of them were able to start. But both of them were withdrawn as well. Probably also with Tuesday in mind. But Stephen Bradley handed some minutes as well to some younger players, Keane Barrett, Luke O'Regan, Max Kovalevskis, and Naj Razi, all starting, with the bulk of them getting the 90 minutes aside from Keane Barrett, which is a really good positive. And even Keane Barrett got 76 minutes before being replaced by Adam Brennan, and that was to kind of see if Rovers could finish the game off without an extra 30 minutes, but it wasn't to be. But look, overall it was a lot of positives to take from that game, for sure. I think the game wasn't, for the vast majority of the 90 minutes, it wasn't fluid, and as I said, that's because of the changes that were to be expected. First half, I don't think anyone really laid a glove on each other. It was goalless at the break. The odd half chance from both sides, but nothing really too threatening on either goal. There was a few bright moments from Luke O'Regan for sure, and he had a ball in the box to Michael Noonan the first 10 minutes, but Noonan just didn't make connection with it. Then there was another moment where Ed McGinty kind of loses possession. He's going to catch the ball, but ends up not coming away with it somehow, and then Luke O'Regan then made an interception, and he kind of more or less ran the length of the pitch and he earned Rovers a corner. That was about 18 minutes in, it's really bright to see. And obviously he's coming off the back of scoring that goal against Hibernian in the friendly as well. So I think it'll be a big confidence boost for him, and you can definitely see more minutes coming for him if he keeps up the performances the way he is, and particularly with the amount of minutes or the amount of games that Rovers are going to be playing at the moment with the European games, and obviously at least one more cup game in anyways, depending on how the third round goes. Obviously the draw as well is on Tuesday. I think it's between 6 and 7 p.m. I read earlier, but yeah, so that was Luke O'Regan. What was positive for sure. There was about 25 minutes, Eamon Pongo, who we picked out in the last episode, he was true on goal. He looked offside. It was near the halfway line. He looked offside, but he makes a darting run. He seems to be one-on-one with Ed McGinty. Sabawale comes to rescue it, wins possession, and puts in a strong tackle. And Sabawale, as usual, had his name ring out from the supporters, as he's a he's a player who's a big favourite around the ground, and obviously, look, the end of his loan looms large, and will it surpass the 2nd of August? Who knows? Another loan deal, permanent. Every week we'll be discussing it probably at this point, but yeah, it's one that be interesting to see how it unfolds. But look, another good performance from him. After about half an hour, Rory Keaton had a chance, and he forces McGinty into a save, and they end up getting a corner from that. They did get a chance from a corner as well. The ball comes in, Rory Keaton heads it, but it's blocked then, and comes away with nothing too threatening, just picking out kind of minor moments. There wasn't too much in the first half. And then Derek Crowley had a chance, Sabawali blocked that one. And then, yeah, I just thought Cork chances were increasing at that time, and didn't look to be overly positive. But yeah, look, that was the first half really, and then as it was goalless at the break, the note I had of it was a poor half to be expected with the rotated side, and it was one that I was bearing in mind that I did say the other night, if I didn't really care how Rovers won, ideally in the 90 minutes, but knowing that it wasn't going to be the most pretty performance, and it wasn't. Extra time was, I will say that, I think Rovers were free flowing, really got into their own. If you had to put an extra couple of minutes on, probably stoppage time of the second half, maybe Rovers would have got the winner and not needed extra time. But second half then, well, you couldn't ask for much more. A goal, Naj Razi, what an absolute stunner, similar to Jack Burns on Tuesday. Kind of cuts in on that left side, and top corner, top left corner from the keeper's perspective, top right from Naj Razi's perspective. But what an unbelievable strike, and he was really impressive this evening. And yeah, he puts Rovers one ahead, and you're thinking if Rovers just hold on, well, that'd be more than enough. But about 7 minutes later, Cork City are awarded a penalty, and they convert as expected, really, because look, the keeper is always the least favourite in that. But yeah, they get a penalty, go back on level terms, and yeah, definitely takes the sting out of the game, and thinking, you're not thinking extra time at that point, but you're just thinking, well, this could be something. And once it's not a cup set, really, is the main point of that. And yeah, look, Rory Keaton goes, he converts it bottom left, and McGinty goes the opposite way. About 10 minutes later, then Cian Barra had a really good chance. He kind of sends the defender on a dummy, and gets a shot off, and it leads to a corner. But it was a good attempt, and looked threatening as well. A few minutes later, there was a scramble in the box, and the Stevens kind of waiting for the ball to drop. But I think he waits too long and takes the sting out, because then the keeper can he steps back and he makes a save then. And yeah, just moments like that, you're thinking, if you just bury that just the first time of asking. I know sometimes the other alternative is that might just be ballooned over the bar, but you just never know, really. There was a call for a penalty as well for Rovers on 72 minutes. Aaron Green leading the calls for that. And then a minute later, he gets a shot off, and the chances start to increase, and the crowd start to make more noise as well to help Rovers find that second goal and help them be on their way to, as everyone thought, no one wanted an extra half an hour. Obviously, well, if you're to trade in that for the fee, fair enough. But other than that, yeah, the players wouldn't have wanted an extra 30 minutes, and nor would the fans, with the players in mind of, everyone knows exactly the demands of this side at the moment, and that's only going to continue, because there's 2 more rounds of European football at least. Obviously the games against Ararat, Armenia, and they will be in the third round regardless of the outcome. They're all actually guaranteed a playoff now. There's also guaranteed 3 more rounds, including the one that's coming up. But yeah, then there was, coming into stoppage time, Asamoah kind of puts a cross in across the face of goal. No one gets a touch on it, thinking the chances are there, momentum's building. And one where 3 minutes into stoppage time, there was 4 added. Adam Brennan slips in John McGovern, but the ball gets caught in his feet. and groans frustration. And I think everyone else did probably that was watching on or at the game or watching from home. Asamoah, I thought had won it in the 94th minute. There's a ball in, the shot gets blocked and it falls at Asamoah. It looks like he has more or less of an empty goal. There's a couple of defenders in the way of it, but yeah, it just doesn't go in. And yeah, everyone was ready to jump around for last minute celebrations, but it wasn't to be. It didn't work out like that. It ends 1-1, obviously at full time, with extra time to come. No, I said we got what we expected from watching the game, but also what we didn't want, and that was extra time. Within 3 minutes of the first half of extra time, Rovers earn a penalty as Mo is taken down. John McGovern just about converts it as well. Keeper does get a strong touch to it, but it ends up going up and in. Rovers take the lead down 2-1. And then there was a kind of a half chance then for Cork, a ball into the back post from the corner. Rory Keaton has a chance, but he kind of just balloons it over. Second half of extra time, John McGovern, he slipped in, takes it around the keeper, and makes it 3-1. And then with only about 3 minutes left till stoppage time and extra time of the second half, John McGovern down the right, cuts back, gives it to Max Kovalevskis, and he tops it off to make a 4-1. Rovers do the business in the end, the long way around, but John McGovern was definitely the difference there, and what a positive impact he had on the game. A player who's in fine form, it must be said, for sure. He's been everything he's touched at the moment is turned into gold, and well, Rovers just need to utilise this as much as they can, and if take that into Tuesday in Armenia. If John McGovern can keep up performances like that, he'll become definitely. I think he's fighting to become a regular starter at the minute, and sure, if he puts in more performances the way he did tonight, I don't think it'll take long before he becomes one. He's been really phenomenal at the minute, and he's flying on all cylinders. Look, he's going to take a lot of confidence from that. Essentially because he was the main difference. He was the difference for Rovers winning that game or going to penalties potentially. As I said, the 2 goals, an assist as well for Ciannt Park, just in flying form, and obviously he's toppling on as well from the brace he got against Floriana on Tuesday. He's everything he's touching. 4 goals in 2 games, and you can't ask for much more than that. It was good to see as well that Stephen Bradley did manage the minutes. As I said, did suspect there was going to be rotation, and as I suspected, the performance was going to take a little bit of a hit. It did. That's why I think you saw the game go to extra time. If Rovers, as I said, were a bit stronger in their starting 11, they wouldn't. But look, it's all the managing a minute really. Huge games just keep coming, and they're not slowing down. Like throughout the game, obviously you had Pico Lopes. He played a half. He was withdrawn for league race then at half time. Obviously managing his workload on the way back from America, playing at the World Cup as well. Sabawali was withdrawn for Asamoah, Matt Healy for John O'Sullivan, Michael Noonan for John McGovern, Ciannt Park for Adam Brennan, and Aaron Green for Jack Byrne as well. So yeah, like it was good to see that Rovers can rotate and still win the game. Now I know over 90 minutes they didn't win the game, technically a draw, but still good to see as well that once the reinforcements kind of got their chance. I know obviously the reinforcements essentially John McGovern, but once they got a chance to get going, they did, and it kind of shows the impact they can have once they're on the pitch, in any capacity, whether they're starting, whether they're coming on. So yeah, look, it's another positive for Rovers, and they're in the half for the third round draw. As I said, it does take place on Tuesday between 6 and 7 p.m. Rovers will be in European action at the time of the draw, so might not be too much attention turned on that, but yeah, just something to keep an eye on. And who knows who Rovers will face. There's a couple of teams in there now that I'm sure some fans are licking their lips at the chance of having them maybe an away day, on something different as well, to what Rovers are accustomed to with the league. You have Athlone, you have Bray, obviously the big shock is Kerry. They're in the after knocking Shelbourne out on penalties. But John Russell has a good track record of playing Kerry in the cup. taking the lead there twice and somehow not coming away with a win once. So yeah, um, yeah. Look, it's gonna be. I'm sure everyone will be excited for the draw as well. And obviously we'll be touching on it anyways. But the Champions League and Europa League draw, the third round draws take place on Monday as well. Monday morning, Rovers will be in both, as I said, Champions League and Europa League. The Conference League draw takes place on the same day, but Rovers don't need to be looking at that. They're not going to be in that one. But look, we touched on Pico. Let's touch on a little bit more in a bit more detail. It was recently revealed that he will have a civic reception. It's going to take place on Saturday, 25th of July at 2 p.m. in Eamonn Ceannt Park, Lourdes Celtic, Rutland Grove entrance. It's going to be hosted by the Dublin City Council, Lord Mayor Darrell Barron, presiding, community members, young members, club representatives, all invited. I'm not too sure on exactly how that would work. In terms of, no, what I mean is, just in terms of if anyone just wanted to go down, I don't think it's one of them types of events. I don't think anyone can just go. Now look, all the details are there, so I don't think, I don't know if fans are thinking of going or being near the event. I'm not too sure. But yeah, look, it's at least the main thing is that there is going to be something to recognise exactly this heroic feat. You know, obviously Pico Lopes born in Crumlin, and for it to be there is a nice touch. And yeah, look, the Dublin City Council bringing the honour obviously back to where this journey began for Roberto Lopes, and you know that's a deliberate thing they've done. You know, to kind of back to where it all presides for Lopes. It's great to see. First of all, look, that's the main thing. What Roberto Lopes and Cape Verde achieved at the World Cup was nothing short of phenomenal. For it to be their first ever World Cup, number one, to be the smallest nation to ever reach a knockout stage is unbelievable. And let's not forget the 4 games they had. After 90 minutes they didn't lose any of them, and 2 of them are the World Cup finalists. You know, Argentina and Spain. Cape Verde bringing Argentina for 120 minutes. For Argentina only to win 3-2 after them 120 minutes. Spain drawing 0-0 with them in their opening game of the World Cup. Like, it's just the biggest thing I think that Roberto Lopes, that Cape Verde can take away from this. And look, I know we're kind of preaching on maybe what everyone else has been discussing in anyways, but the fact that the reception's next week. But the main thing I think really is how much they held their own. They didn't just show up and participate and lose 4-0 in every game, particularly how it was kind of maybe predicted by some pundits, you know, some saying how many goals are Spain going to score ahead of that first game. And then once they realised what Cape Verde can do, I think everyone kind of changed their perception. And obviously they drew Uruguay as well and knocked Uruguay out, and Saudi Arabia. You know, the two of them didn't qualify at the expense of Cape Verde. Cape Verde finished second, and even at the time you heard maybe some pundits saying how Cape Verde benefited of the new format of it being, you know, third place. You know, it's in the way it goes, top 2 are through, which it always was, but that 8 of the 12 third place teams still go through as well. But sure, if it was a normal format, Cape Verde would have been there as well. Now, look, granted, I think maybe some people touched on as well that was the fact it was 48 teams instead of the normal traditional 32. But look, they qualified, they got there, and they qualified on merit for both the World Cup and for the knockout stages of the World Cup. And on top of all of it, sure, they held their own against Argentina. Now they could go on and win the World Cup, who knows? And I'm sure RTE would have wanted Roberto Lopes probably on their coverage for the final on Sunday, given that Roberto Lopes has come up against both sides. But of course, the Rover squad will be travelling. They'll be travelling to Armenia, so he won't be available for that. But I'm sure, RT would have been licking their lips at that opportunity had Rovers even been at home for the first leg against Armenia. I think they probably would have been all over that. But yeah, the club charter on the website and anyways and on the social media platforms goes out on Sunday, and the travel with the squad. So you presume then they'll all be going as in the one, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It would have been interesting to hear what Roberto Lopes would have had to say ahead of that final with both of them, as I said, with him coming up against both of them, the man from Crumlin playing for Shamrock Rovers. But yeah, look, it's been a phenomenal story, one that he can be very proud of, that his teammates can be very proud of, and yeah, look, I think everyone at the club and everyone even just I think in Ireland can appreciate this reception that he will have next week, and appreciate what an achievement it is for him, for the league, for Ireland as a whole even, and I think it was at the time as well, it was nice to see how everyone kind of came around to Roberto Lopes, not as if they weren't already, but obviously look, rival supporters and the like, on a normal basis. I'm probably back to normal now since he's returned, but not wanting them to do well if he's in a rival shirt. Obviously, your Bows and your Pats fans, but and obviously him being a former Bows player, but yeah, look, it's one of them stories that I think it touched everyone, and the best thing I think about it was you had the people, as I said, one of the episodes around the time of people coming up. I had people coming up to me who obviously normally being kind of just football, everything's football that comes out of my mouth, and people coming up to me who wouldn't watch football saying, I heard your man so and so is playing there, or I heard he's from Crumlin as well and he's playing at the World Cup, and then I'd just explain the story to them, but even just moments like that I think are really nice, because it gets everyone talking about it, gets everyone thinking about it, and it gets more people interested as well. Cape Verde had a lot of Irish supporters at that World Cup, and I think you saw that it's clear to see from our perspective, hoping Cape Verde people saw that too, because that's exactly what they got. They got a lot more supporters, and I think even going forward you'll see it as well, for upcoming competitions and so on, that once Roberto Lopes is playing for them, I think you'll still have them people hanging around that once they hear Cape Verde again, it will bring them back to the World Cup with really positive memories. And even the positive memory I had particularly was capturing the moment of on the bus back from Sligo, and the supporters all celebrating because it went 1-1 between Argentina and Cape Verde, and everyone just supporting Cape Verde as if you'd swear it was just Ireland playing the game of the World Cup. Everyone watching on their phones and everyone cheering when they score and hoping they win, and the whole lot. It all goes hand in hand. So yeah, look, it's a nice moment for Roberto Lopes. Hopefully he gets to fully kind of appreciate the moment, because obviously he'll probably have one mind on football of whatever does take place in Armenia, and then looking ahead to the second leg as well, that he might hopefully I think he is a player that can appreciate it in the moment. He touched on that one of his interviews before, so I think he'll be fully appreciative of next Saturday's reception as well, and hopefully it's a nice, well organised reception. It seems to be the case, and anyways, and a good afternoon for all. But we'll move it on, and that is to, of course, Tuesday's fixture, and that is Shamrock Rovers coming up against Ararat Armenia. It's a trip to Armenia in the first leg. Rovers are away from home, in the UEFA Champions League second qualifying round, first leg, a big fixture. One that maybe not a lot of fans had much hope in Rovers fulfilling after that first leg in Floriana in Malta, after going 2-0 down. But I think, look, we all were confident that Rovers could turn it around, and then the style they did was absolutely phenomenal too. I remember even touching on in the episode before the second leg, thinking Rovers could play 240 minutes of football between the two games. Now they ended up going to nearly the distance aside from penalties, but playing wise they went the distance against Cork tonight. But yeah, it's another big game for Rovers, and they don't stop. And this is the punishment of success: a trip to Armenia. Important thing to note for anyone who has, well, look, you would have seen it in anyways, but it's a 5 p.m. kickoff for in Irish time. It's 8 p.m. local time, but yeah, just to note that in Ireland it's kicking off at 5 o'clock. So just to note that as well. That's on Tuesday, away to Ararat, Armenia. Ararat, Armenia, founded in 2017. So they're 9 years old is all, and they're in the Champions League qualifiers, having won the title, the title there. And they were originally called FC Ovan Academy, built from the graduates of the Yerevan Football Academy, but they were taken over in 2018. Now I'm going to try to pronounce this name, but as usual, these European fixtures, who knows? Samvel Karapetian, probably done that wrong. However, that's where we're at. He's a Russian Armenian billionaire and construction magnate, so who renamed the club Ararat Armenia. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting challenge for Shamrock Rovers on Tuesday. It's another big game and an away game as well. The away ties. Look, if Floriana's starting to go by, it will be a tough evening for Rovers. But if they definitely can hold in there and bring it back to Tallaght, it's going to be a fortress yet again, and you can expect a big crowd, I think, for the Ararat Armenia fixture in Tallaght. And look, if obviously, well, first of all, if Rovers can get past this, they've qualified for Europe in some capacity. What one, who knows? But the fact that there's a lot riding on it, and I think at the moment, Rovers fans should be confident, not overly confident, like as in cautiously optimistic in that it's going to be a tough game. But there's no reason why Rovers shouldn't be going into this now. On the back as well of the last two games, scoring 9 goals. You can't argue much. You can't argue more than that. With that. And yeah, so if Rovers coming up against this side, they will put it up them. No doubt. They have 3 Armenian Premier League titles. So they won the 2018-19 season, the 19-20 season, and then they've just won obviously the 25-26 season as well. So yeah, three titles. Their name, Ararat Armenia, comes from the Mount Ararat. It's a defining symbol of Armenian national identity. It's on the Armenian coat of arms. It's on their brandy bottles. It's the first thing Armenians point to on the map. It's also in Turkey as well. Armenia has not controlled Mount Ararat since the aftermath of the Armenian genocide. So the fact that Armenians named their club after a mountain they can see from Yerevan on a clear day, they cannot reach it without a Turkish visa, tells you everything about what that name carries. Obviously important to the people of this club of Armenia, for in the context of what they've done so far this season in the Champions League qualifier. So obviously they were in the first round as well. It's not as if they got a bye to the second round. So they're in the first round as well. They did play Riga of Latvia. I think probably a lot more listeners will be familiar with Riga. So the fact that they've beaten Riga is a slight cause for concern, I would say. They won the home leg 2-0, and that was also the first leg. The return leg they lost 3-2 on the night, but they won 4-3 on aggregate. So that is, I think it's a bit about its reason to be a little bit cautious in terms of confidence levels going into this game. It's going to be tough. Champions League fixtures there's no beating around the bush, but yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit. I don't know. It's a little bit. Take what you want from that. Now look, they're vulnerable when they're away from home, as they could concede 3 goals. They kept a clean sheet at home to Riga. But yeah, it's one of them. It's one of these at the moment that if you do hear of the club going into the game, it's always a little bit of concern at the time. So, Rovers coming against Floriana, but obviously look, you're not. If you keep an eye on the other fixtures when the European football comes around, and the European qualifiers in particular come around, you'd obviously know of most of the clubs. However, on a general just basis, like Floriana wouldn't have been too familiar, Ararat Armenia aren't too familiar, they're only 9 years old, and But the fact that Riga are, and the fact that Ararat Armenia have knocked them out is a little bit, just a little bit, um, cause to be cautious going into this game. And as I said, not to be expecting a walkthrough for Rovers. I don't think anyone will expect that in anyways, particularly in the Champions League. But then again, look, you have the fact that Rovers did put 5 past Floriana, put 4 past Cork after 120 minutes, 9 goals in the recent 2 games. You can't argue too much with that either. So, and John McGovern's had 4 of them. So if he's continuing this rich vein of form, which we all hope he does, and hoping it never ends, you could see him putting in a shift against Armenia as well. Now the stadium. So the Obovyan City Stadium. So it holds a total of 3,149 as the capacity. And the club do play across a couple of grounds. So this is the one they played in against Riga. Now, from stuff I've read, they don't tend to be an overly imposing fan base. Now, I think that's maybe to be expected, the fact that this club are properly founded in 2017. So that might play to an advantage of Shamrock Rovers going there, because you can expect, obviously, when this club go to Tallaght, they will be met with a wall of noise and fans who will do all their best to put the opposition off their game and help Shamrock Rovers and be that 12th man, which is exactly what they were on Tuesday against Floriana, and it's exactly what they'll need to be with the return leg in Tallaght. It's always the benefit of having the second leg in Tallaght, I will say that much. Knowing what you need to do by the time it comes back to Tallaght is always a positive. And this can be a positive. Now, of course, look, the other concern would be if it was done after the first leg, and not in the Rovers' perspective. If Ararat Armenia were to hammer Rovers, well then obviously that's not a positive. But I don't think that will be the case. I think Rovers should be confident, not quietly confident maybe, going into this game. It's one that everyone looks forward to, for sure. And yeah, look, it's the Champions League qualifiers. It doesn't get much bigger than this. As I said, some people are thinking that Rovers should be targeting Europa League phase. It means the 2 extra games, which is obviously a huge step up. And anyways, obviously, prize money in terms of qualification will step it up too, and it gives Rovers more leeway in terms of finances, funds to play around with. And I do know it's massively important the club do qualify for European football this season. But as well as that, of course, it comes with European football. It comes with Europa League as well, as obviously you have higher quality oppositions, and as 2 extra games, more income. It's an interesting one. As I said, the 2 draws take place on Monday. As far as I'm aware, the times aren't confirmed. They don't normally confirm them until a little bit closer to the time. But yeah, look, Rovers will be on the half for both the Champions and Europa League, so it will be interesting to see. Now, I do know as well as that Rovers' potential opponents coming in to that draw for any of them really is going to be quite a step up. I won't list them all, as there's plenty of teams that Rovers could be drawn on Monday. And as well as that, there's only going to be one. Well, there's going to be, technically there'll be 4 after the draw is done, because obviously you'll have your 2 potential opponents should Rovers make it to the 3rd round of the Champions League, and then 2 potential opponents should Rovers drop into the Europa League. But yeah, in terms of Ararat Armenia, it's going to be a tough test. They're the champions of Armenia. That's why they're in the Champions League, of course. But as well as that, they're on the back of beating Riga, so they should be confident. Riga aside, as I said, a lot more of our listeners, and even me and Adam, who would be saying the same if he was here, but would be saying the same. Riga are a much more familiar opposition. The fact that Ararat Armenia put them out is slight cause for concern. Not going to be the be all and the end all. It's not going to be the defining thing that makes fans confident or not confident, but it's just one of these moments that you think anything can happen. But look, it's a big game on Tuesday. You can expect, a lot of the players who face Floriana to be in that return to the starting 11. Um, and yeah. So like, I think Dylan Watts will be back in that starting 11. I think Sabawali will retain his place in the starting 11 along with Pico Lopez, but they'll play more football as well. Mahidi, I think, is one you can expect to see because he was suspended against Floriana. It made down for changes. Jack Byrne will come back into the starting 11. Adam Brennan. It'd be interesting to see if Jake Mulroney returns. And Graham Burke, of course, you'll see as well. John McGovern. I think you'll see McGovern start up front with Burke. Now, obviously, every time I say this, when I say Burke starting up top, we all know he's a free roamer. He'll be out anywhere on the pitch. He could be helping centre backs out at one moment and then putting the ball in the back of the net the next. So, yeah, obviously on paper he'd be named the front two. If Bradley does opt for them for that striking partnership. But yeah, look, going into the game and the fact that Rovers did do so well in extra time, I think confidence is high. Look, obviously would have preferred it not to be 120 minutes. Would have preferred it to be 90 minutes that Rovers done the business to get into the third round of the FAI Cup. But look, they scored 4 goals. The ball had to go in the net. It did 4 times. And the only goal they conceded was a penalty. So, look, Rovers could be confident. And like, if Rovers got into the third round of the Champions League, as I said, that's, first of all, it's European football guaranteed. It's qualification guaranteed. Also at the earliest possible point, making it to the third round of the Champions League, as opposed to it being delayed if you're already in the Conference League at this point, or maybe Europa League, and you're thinking, if it was third round, then you might drop into the playoffs. If Rovers get past Tallaght Armenia, they're into Europe, and then it's about targeting. Is it going to be is it going to be Europa League or Conference League? Why can't it be Champions League? But no, of course, look, the realistic term, I think it can be a realistic game at this moment is Europa League. But yeah, look, we can only time will tell. But look, that's it on the Tallaght Armenia preview, and yeah, that's it from me. Look, it's a late one, as it was recording this after the Cork City game as well, and the fact that I went an extra 30 minutes, part of the reason I probably didn't want to. But yeah, look, that's it from this episode. As I said, always make sure you do follow us on all the social media platforms across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube at The Milltown Way. Make sure, if you do enjoy this podcast, give us a rating or tell your friends, family about it. Give us a share, a like. Everything to support the podcast goes a long way. But that's it for myself. We'll be back after the Tallaght Armenia game to discuss that and preview the second leg. Other than that, thanks for listening.